Brett Bear and the Trick or Treat. Brett Bear and all the toys in Kyle's room were in a lively mood. Halloween had come around again. Every year the toys and a very eager Brett Bear would sit on the windowsill and watch the children in the street wearing scary Halloween costumes. The children would stop at each house they came to and shout, "Trick or treat!" hoping they would frighten whoever answered the door into filling their bags with sweets and chocolates. Kyle and Lucy were especially excited because they loved to dress up in their favourite costumes. It was also the only time of year they were allowed to eat all the sweets they could and not get told off. This year, Lucy wanted her costume to turn her invisible, but Mummy said she'd be too worried she might lose her. "OK," said Lucy, "I'll be a white rabbit instead." "What's so scary about a white rabbit?" scowled Kyle. "White rabbits can disappear," said Lucy. "I've seen it happen in a magic trick. Imagine how scared everyone will be if I disappeared right in front of them." "That's silly," said Kyle. "Those magic tricks aren't real. And you're not a real rabbit, just pretend." "Well, I think I can turn invisible," said Lucy. "Anyway, what are you dressing up as?" "I'm going to be a spooky vampire bat, and I'll have a cape for wings and everything." Kyle took a big breath because he was getting very excited. "I'm going to dress Brett Bear up to look scary too. Yes, I'm going to turn him into a vampire." "I don't like vampires," said Lucy. "Too scary." But when Brett overheard that he was going to have a costume too, he was the happiest he could be. None of the other toys would get to dress up, just him. And wouldn't that be fun? Then Brett had an idea. "What if," he thought to himself, "I try and frighten all the other toys? They'll get such a shock when they see me as a vampire, they might treat me to all their sweets just to stop me scaring them." Brett chuckled to himself when Kyle dressed him in a long silky cape, fixed a pair of devilish horns onto his forehead, and stuck some spooky fangs across his smiling face. Kyle placed Brett onto his bed. "It's time for me to go and scare the neighbours with my scary vampire bat costume," said Kyle. "Later, Brett." Kyle gave a swish of his bat wings and ran down the stairs. Mummy and Lucy the White Rabbit were waiting for him so they could all go out and play trick or treat. Daddy was staying home so that he could give out goodies to any children knocking on Kyle or Lucy's door. On the front porch was a wide-mouthed and evil-looking jack-o'-lantern, and in the living room window the children had stuck pictures of bats, ghosts, and witches on broomsticks. The house was looking very spooky indeed. As soon as Brett Bear heard the front door close, he rubbed his chin and watched the other toys lining up to see the children out in the street. He crept off the bed, eased up onto the desk, and jumped up behind Kyle's little pink piggy bank. "Mwah-ha-ha!" He laughed his most evil laugh, and the other toys ran from the windowsill in fright. The terrified pink piggy squealed, but Brett just raised his vampire cloak up high, and in a scary voice he said, "Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something nice to eat." "Please, please," said the frightened pig, "take all my jelly beans, only please don't scare me any more." Brett grabbed the jelly beans and looked for his next victim. Hiding behind Kyle's book bag was George the gorilla. The book bag was trembling, and Brett knew he could easily spook that gangly gorilla. "Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something nice to eat," shouted Brett as he pulled the book bag aside. "Here," said George. "Take all my licorice all sorts. They're no good to me if my teeth are chattering so much I can't chew them." "Mwah-ha-ha!" laughed Brett as he made off with all of George the gorilla's licorice all sorts. Brett crept around the room until he came across a rattling sound. It was coming from behind a football. Brett looked around the football and saw Kyle's toy robot Ralph with his hands over his robot eyes. He was so afraid of Brett's vampire costume, his metal parts shook so hard he sounded like a rattle. Brett grinned to himself. This was going to be too easy. "Boo!" Brett shouted. Ralph's robot arms flew up in the air. "Trick or treat! Smell my feet! Give me something nice to eat!" said Brett. "Take it all!" said Ralph with a shaky voice. "Have all my chocolate-covered raisins! I don't want them any more!" Brett trotted away with even more goodies in search of another victim to scare. He spotted his next victim very quickly. In the corner of the room was an old-fashioned jack-in-the-box, which Grandpa had found on his travels. The jack-in-the-box usually sprang out of his box with a big smile, but now he was hiding inside, too afraid to come out. Brett Bear ran across the room and banged loudly on the box. "Trick or treat! Smell my feet! Give me something nice to eat!" The box sprang open, but when Jack jumped out, he wasn't smiling. He was terrified, and all his jelly tots came flying out of the box with him. "Mwah-ha-ha!" laughed the evil Brett Bear and caught all of poor Jack's jelly tots in his silky cape. Brett skipped over to Kyle's bed to see how many goodies he'd gathered. He had a huge pile of jelly beans, licorice all sorts, chocolate raisins and jelly tots. "This is great," thought Brett. "What a successful night of being a spooky vampire." Soon Kyle would come back and tell Brett all about his spooky adventures. "If I'm lucky," thought Brett, "he might even read me a ghost story. And I'm so tough I won't even be scared." But Brett had been so busy scaring all the toys, as he sat looking at and counting all his sweets, he felt tired and decided to have a little nap before gobbling them all up. After a little while, Brett woke with a start. He opened his eyes, but the lights in Kyle's bedroom were all out. Brett's eyes opened wide, and he looked around the dark bedroom. Is anybody there?" asked Brett in a little voice. All of a sudden, Kyle's train began to whir into action and move around the track very, very slowly. Then Brett heard some strange noises. It sounded like a room full of scary ghosts. "Woo!" said the ghostly voices. "Woo!" "Who's there?" said a frightened Brett. "Please put on the light." "We are all the ghosts in the ghost train. We've come for all the evil vampire bears, and we're taking them far, far away." "Please," said Brett. "Please don't take me away. I'll be good." But the ghosts on the ghost train just laughed at Brett with their evil, ghostly laughter. Brett began to shiver and shake. He never knew there was such a thing as a ghostly ghost train before. He didn't want to be taken away. Then suddenly there was an enormous bounce on the bed and a very loud "Boo!" Brett screamed and jumped under the duvet. But then he heard giggles, and then some more giggles that turned into laughter. He recognized those little laughs straight away. The lights came on, and Brett found himself surrounded by all the toys. They laughed so much they began to roll around on their backs on Kyle's bed. "Ha ha ha! We got you!" snorted the pink piggy bank. "We scared you this time," chuckled George the gorilla. "You should see your face," giggled Ralph the robot. "Not so nice to be scared, is it, Brett?" grinned Jack from his box. "No," said Brett. "It's not very nice to be scared. I'm very sorry. I got carried away because it's Halloween." Then Brett Bear had another idea. A very good idea. "I know," said Brett. "How about we have our own Halloween party? Now that we've all been spooked, let's all enjoy our treats. Let's share all our sweets like friends are supposed to." "Good idea," agreed all the toys, and they all began to tuck into the pile of sweets on the bed. "I know," said Brett. "We could all tell a ghost story each." "No!" all the toys said at once, and threw the duvet back over Brett's head. "No more spooky stuff." Brett began to laugh from under the duvet and popped his head back out. His devil horns had become unstuck, and he was looking less scary. "OK, no more spooky stuff," he said, and removed his little fangs so he could enjoy the sweets and chocolates with his very best and not so spooky friends. They munched away happily, too busy to worry about ghosts and ghouls and things that go bump in the night.